Hare Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, everyone. Can you all hear me? Hear me okay, Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, thank you. So we'll begin with the prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Namo Pankajanaಭಾಯ Namo Pankajamaline Namo Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangrahe Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. I welcome all of you for our Saturday morning Bhagavatam discussion. I seek everyone's blessings. I am not qualified to speak on this transcendental subject matter, but with your blessings, I will try to speak something today. This is purely for my purification, this service. I seek everyone's blessings. We'll begin with our shloka today. So let me share the screen. Can you all see the screen?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, thank you. So today's verse is from Canto 1, Chapter 4, verse number 7. We'll recite the verse and read translation purport. Katamba Pandavesya Raja Rishi Munina Saha Sambada Samabhutata Yatraisha Satvati Shrutihi Katamba Pandavesya Raja Rishi Munina Saha Sambada Samabhutata Yatraisha Satvati Shrutihi. Can Mataji and Prabhu recite the verse, please?
Katam va Pandaveyasya Rajarishermunina saha Samvadaha samabhutata Yatraisha satvati shrutihi.
Thank you, Prabhu. Mataji's.
Katam va Pandaveyasya Rajarshirmunina saha Samvada samabhutata Yatraisha satvati srutihi.
Anyone else wants to recite?
Katam va Pandavashya Rajarshirmunina saha Samvadaha samabhutatva yatraisya satvati shruti.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Mataji. So let's read the synonyms word by word translation. Katam, how is it? Va, also, Pandavayasya, of the descendant of Pandu, Parikshit, Rajarishi, of the king who was the sage, Munina, with the Muni, Saha, with Samvadaha, discussion, Samabhut, took place, Tata, O darling, Yatra, whereupon, Esha, like this, Satvati, transcendental, Shrutihi, essence of the Vedas. So we'll read the translation purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So translation, how did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Bhagavatam, to be sung to him? So let's read the translation. It's a small translation of purport. We'll read it one more time. How did it happen? How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Bhagavatam, to be sung to him? Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam is stated here as the essence of the Vedas. It is not an imaginary story as it is sometimes considered by unauthorized men. It is also called Shuka Samhita, or the Vedic hymn spoken by Sri Shukadev Goswami, the great liberated sage. So let's offer Mangalacharan and then before we begin our discussion. Om Ajnanathmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Sakshurumilitamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Brishtaya Bhutale Srimade Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachata Desadharine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we'll begin our discussion now. So it's a very small purport. Prabhupada didn't give much explanation on that. Basically, this is a question. So first, let's see where this question is coming from, like in the context of this verse. So the context of this verse is, we are in the 4th chapter now on Canto 1. We have completed 3 chapters. The first chapter is basically the questions by sages. The sages asked 6 main questions, important questions to Sutta Goswami. And the 2nd chapter and 3rd chapter, Sutta Goswami gives answers to those 6 questions. And we have elaborately discussed, so we are not going to go in that. So now 4th chapter begins. It's entitled Appearance of Narada Muni. Actually, the chapter begins with again a set of questions. And this time it's a Shaunaka Rishi is asking. He's a leader for the assembly, the sages. So he's putting forth the further questions to Sutta Goswami. And that's what the Srimad Bhagavatam is start, it will start, the recitation will start after this. So basically it's a set of questions. So let's see what are the questions they're asking. So Shaunaka Rishi asking, first he asked about the questions about Bhagavatam. He asked, which yuga it was spoken, at which place, for what reason it was, written, and for whose inspiration, by whose inspiration Vyasadev compiled Srimad Bhagavatam. So these are the questions asked by Shaunaka Rishi about Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he asked questions about Sukadev Goswami. Sukadev Goswami is like a son of Vyasadev. He was like a madman, retarded, and he was looking like a madman, retarded man, even though he was a self-realized soul. He was wandering like an incognito. And how is that, he met with Parikshit Maharaj? That's what the question is. So after asking about Sukadev Goswami, then they're asking questions about Parikshit Maharaj. So this is 3 categories. About Parikshit Maharaj, they ask, tell us about his birth, his activities, and his renunciation. So we are in verse 7, and this question is, they're asking, they want to know how Sukadev Goswami, after leaving home, after hearing Bhagavatam from Vyasadev, he left home and he's wandering incognito like a madman, but he met with Parikshit Maharaj. How is that happened? And how is that the Bhagavatam was spoken to him? And that was the question. So I thought instead of just leaving the question alone, we can discuss the answer itself today. The answer is given in 19th chapter, actually, but we are not going to wait until 19th chapter. We are in 4th chapter now. So we will discuss the question, means the answer today. So why is it the answer given in the 19th chapter? Because when Sutta Goswami was asked all these questions, he started answering all these questions. First, he'll say, yeah, Vyasadeva was inspired by Narada Muni, and then he compiled Bhagavatam. And then he will take a detour. he won't directly go into Parikshit Maharaj. He'll take a detour before the birth of Parikshit Maharaj. Like, Kurukshetra war was over, and then Krishna was about to leave. War was over, and then Bhishma Dev passing away, and then Krishna was about to leave. And then Uttara coming running to Krishna, asking to save the baby in her womb, which is Parikshit Maharaj. And then Drona's son, which is Ashwatthama, getting punished. And then Kunti Devi offering prayers, that chapter. And then Krishna leaving Hastinapur, and then reaching Dwaraka. Then one more chapter. And then Vidura comes to Hastinapur to enlighten Dhritarashtra. And then Dhritarashtra leaves home. Then the sages will ask, we wanted to know about, Parikshit Maharaj. So in the meantime, Arjuna goes to Dwaraka, and then Arjuna comes back with the news that Krishna left the material world. And then Pandavas retire. And then when Pandavas retire, before they retire, they make Parikshit as a king, and then they retire. And then only Parikshit Maharaj activities start. And then Sutta Goswami explains about how Parikshit punished Kali. And then the incident happened where Parikshit get angry at Shamika Rishi when he goes for hunting and put a dead snake around his neck. And then Shaumika Rishi's son Shringi cursing Parikshit Maharaj. And then Parikshit Maharaj renounce everything and sit in the Ganges river bank ready to hear Bhagavatam. So that's the context. And then now Sukadev Goswami goes and meet with Parikshit Maharaj. But how is that possible? What happened? How they both met? So that's the answer to this question. So Parikshit Maharaj, the thing that he did, like putting the snake around the rishi, it seems externally very immature act, but it is not, because it was the will of the Lord. It was the desire of Krishna that Parikshit has to renounce all his material possessions, and he has to be the instrument for Srimad Bhagavatam to be spoken and come back to Godhead. That was the plan of Krishna. So Arjuna was the instrument for Bhagavad Gita to be spoken. Like that, his grandson Parikshit Maharaj was the instrument for Bhagavatam to be spoken. Because if it was not Arjuna who was put into illusion of family affection, then Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Krishna. Now Parikshit Maharaj was put into the frustration and anger, those things. It is an arrangement of the Lord, so Bhagavatam can be spoken. So here in the 19th chapter, Parikshit Maharaj says, I'm going to skip this and then we'll come back to this. Sorry. So Parikshit Maharaj says that because I am the grandson of Pandavas, Krishna is favoring me. So that's what he sent Sukadev Goswami to me. So that's what he says. Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is very dear to the sons of King Pandu, has accepted me as one of those relatives just to please his great cousins and brothers. So Prabhupada in this purport write, if someone is a devotee, even the family members also get favored. So just a quiz question here. Can anybody think of any from Bhagavatam, any personality who was a devotee and their family member was favored? Whether they are devotee or non-devotee, doesn't matter. Yes, very good, Mataji. Prahlad Maharaj and his father Hiranyakashipu completely, inimical to Lord Vishnu, but he was favored. He even got salvation. Any other example?
Dhruva Mataji.
Perfect. Yes, thank you, Prabhu. Dhruva Maharaj, his both mother and stepmother. Mother was a great devotee. Both mother and stepmother got benefited. Any other example? I was thinking of Prahlad Maharaj itself, his grandson, Bali Maharaj. That's a mercy also by Vamana Dev. So Prabhupada write nice purport in this about, when someone is a devotee, they don't have to bother about the family members. The family members will be also favored by the Lord. And then Parikshit Maharaj says that Sukadev Goswami was inspired by the Lord. That's what he showed up here. He voluntarily appeared because he was inspired by the Lord. Because without being inspired, it says otherwise, without being inspired by Lord Krishna, how is that you have voluntarily appeared here? though you're moving incognito to the common man and are not visible to us who are on the verge of death. So this is the answer. Sukadeva Goswami was inspired by Lord Krishna to meet Parikshit Maharaj. So in this Prabhupada write a beautiful purport how this happens. So if you are getting a help from a spiritual master, that means we are getting help, direct help from the Lord himself. So how is that? So if someone is very eager to perform bhakti and want to go back to Godhead, Krishna will understand that because he's seated in our heart as a Paramatma. So if any soul shows some interest to go back or eagerness to go back to Godhead, then Krishna will send a bona fide spiritual master on their way. And if a devotee, if a person meet with that spiritual master is basically, they are a transparent medium, they are a direct representative of the Lord. So if the devotee meet with the spiritual master, Prabhupada write, it's guaranteed they're going to go back to Godhead in that very lifetime. But then Prabhupada write one more thing, provided the devotee is very sincere, right? I was going to say something about in this regard. I met my spiritual master, and then maybe after 8 or 10 years, I didn't practice, this Krishna conscious life seriously for about at least 8 or 10 years after I met my spiritual master. So my spiritual master used to say the analogy of wet wood and a dry wood. The wet wood would not ignite quick. Maybe I was a wet wood, took a long time to ignite. A dry wood, it would ignite quick. So Prabhupada right here, as soon as a devotee meet with the bona fide spiritual master, it's guaranteed, provided the devotee is very sincere. So here, the spiritual master, the bona fide spiritual master is Sukadeva Goswami, and a great devotee is Parikshit Maharaj. They meet. And then Parikshit Maharaj asks, I'm going to die in 7 days. Please tell me, what is the duty of someone who is about to die? And then Sukadeva Goswami says, you need to remember, worship, and glorify Lord. Then let's speak Bhagavatam. So that's then second canto onwards, Bhagavatam starts. So 19th chapter is the last chapter in canto 1. So that is the answer. Sukadeva Goswami was inspired by the Lord to meet Parikshit Maharaj. So now what is our next discussion? So today, so we saw the answer. So I'm going to go back to slides. I missed it. So today's discussion, I thought we'll discuss about, we answered the first one, how did King Parikshit meet Sukadeva Goswami? So the next thing is the translation says the transcendental essence of Vedas, which is Srimad Bhagavatam, was spoken to Parikshit Maharaj. So instead of directly going into how Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedas, I don't have a very great understanding about Vedas and in branches, but I listened to a series of lectures, a seminar about this, the tree of Vedic literature. So I thought we'll discuss some basic definition of what is Veda and its branches before we understand how Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedas. So it's going to be basically a very basic definition of what is Veda and what is the branches and how it all culminates, or how the Bhagavatam becomes the essence of all of that. And then if time permits, we'll talk about the 4 books are enough, Prabhupada books. So we'll go into now the Vedas part. So the tree of Vedic literature. So let's learn about what is Vedas. So Vedas means, basically Veda means, sorry, I keep moving these things here and there. Veda means knowledge. That's the meaning of Veda. And Veda are aparurishaya, which means they are not compilation of human knowledge. So let's understand the word aparurishaya. Purusha means a person. Purushaya means authored by a person. Aparurishaya means not authored by a human being. So that's what aparurishaya. So Vedas are not authored by human beings. Why? Because Vedas are faultless. They are complete, original knowledge, and they don't have any flaw or fault. Because the human beings have 4 defects. We all know We have imperfect senses. We can be illusioned. We have cheating propensity, and we make mistakes. So those are the 4 defects of human beings. And if that human being compile anything, it's going to have some defect. But Vedas don't have any defect because it's compiled by, it's spoken by Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. So Vedas comes from spiritual world, from Lord Krishna himself. And it's a sound incarnation of the Supreme Lord. And the root word, the Veda comes from a root word called to know and to be aware of. And it was first given to Lord Brahma. We know that from the first verse of Bhagavatam, Thene Brahma Adi Kavaye. The Vedic knowledge was directly imparted to Lord Brahma's heart. So after the, Garbhodaksha, Vishnu's navel, the lotus sprout, and the first living being Brahma created, and then the Vedic knowledge, the knowledge was directly imparted to the heart of Brahma by the Vishnu, so he can do the creative function. And then Brahma had his own sons from his mind, and then the knowledge was distributed to his sons for the people in the world. So like that, it just transmitted. And then the Vedas are compared to a desire tree. We'll explain that later. So the original source of knowledge is Veda. So any knowledge, whether it be material or spiritual, the original source is knowledge. Knowledge is Vedas. No one can claim any knowledge other than beyond the Vedas. So that's a basic, understanding about what is Veda, where it comes from, and just meaning of the word Veda and what it contains. So Vedas means it's a knowledge, but what it has. So it's compared to a desire tree. That means everything that one should know is in Vedas. And it has both, as I said, material, mundane necessity, as well as spiritual realization, para and apara vidya, material knowledge and spiritual knowledge. So it has so many departments of knowledge, but there are also specific direction about spiritual realization. So basically, the Vedas are given, it's basically a regulated knowledge for what? For people like, we have 4 varnas and 4 ashrams, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Shudra, Vaishya, and Brahmachari, Sannyasi, and Vanaprastha. So those 4 varnas and ashramas, they need to have those knowledge that can gradually elevate themselves to the spiritual platform. It is not for just, enjoying the material world, learn about it, like Artha, Kama, Moksha, Dharma. So not for that alone. One need to push themselves to the spiritual realization, ultimately to end in devotional service to the Lord. That is what Veda says. And Veda has everything. So that is what Veda. And then what is in the translation or in the purport, Prabhupada says that this is the Bhagavatam is a Shuka Samhita. How is that Shuka Samhita? So the Vedas, when it is presented, it was presented in a Sanskrit verses in a meter form. And then one verse is called mantra. And then if you put all the mantras together, a collection of mantra is called Shukta. And then the collection of Shukta is called Samhita. So when it's spoken by Shukadev Goswami, then it's called a Shuka Samhita. It's a collection of suktas. So that's what it means. So let's go into the tree, actual tree. Hope everyone is seeing this tree now before we go into the next slide. I want everybody to look at it before, so we'll have some understanding. So this is a Vedic tree. So the definition we are going to see today is what is Shruti, what is Smriti, and then under Shruti what comes, under Smriti what comes. So basically that's all we are going to discuss the definition. So if you look at Shruti, it has Vedas underneath, Upavedas and Vedangas. So I just want everybody to remember these 3, Vedas, Upavedas and Vedangas. And under Vedas has 4 things, Samhita, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Upanishads. So Shruti up to Upanishads. And then we'll go to Smriti. I circled a few things because I don't want to go in all of that. We'll just discuss what is Puranas, Itihas, Pancharatras, and Tantras under Smriti. So let's get into the definition of each one of that. So first, let's learn what is Shruti. Shruti scriptures means what is heard. It is not in written form. The Vedas means knowledge. Knowledge heard by hearing. That is what Shruti means. And it is like a mother. Shruti is compared to like a mother. Krishna is a father. So knowledge heard just by oral reception, it's called Shruti. And originally there was only one Veda, because in those days people were so intelligent, long life, good memory, good intelligence. They were just able to just hear and just understand and remember it. So there's only one Veda in the beginning. That is called Shruti. So let's see what is Smriti. Smriti scriptures are what is remembered and then written form. That is called, those are called supplementary presentation of Vedas. So we'll talk about that later in detail, what are those things are. So just now Shruti is what is heard, Smriti is what is remembered and written. So those are main two divisions. So as I said, there was only one Veda in the beginning, which is called Yajurveda. Yajur means soft or murmuring. Yajurveda basically had sacrifices, information about sacrifices. Because people, like as I said, the 4 varnas and ashram, they have to do their occupational duty and do a purification, elevate themselves by doing sacrifice. So that's what Yajurveda is. And then Vyasadev, Vyasa means compiler or editor. He saw the anomaly of the Kali Yuga and influence of Kali Yuga. People are going to have short memory, not good intelligence, short life. So he divided the Veda into 4, which is Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva Veda. So we are still in the Shruti part. And the Rig Veda has mostly prayers. He, according to the usage, he divided them, So Rig Veda has mostly prayers, all prayers. Yajurveda has the sacrifice, the hymns for the oblations. And Sama Veda is both the prayers and the hymns, same thing, but in a meter form for singing. So that's a Sama Veda. He just categorized them. Atharva Veda is for body and word maintenance and distraction. Because Vedas are basically for what? For our, to understand, get knowledge about our existence, how to maintain our life in this material world, and finally, how to get out of here too. That is what the Veda teaches us. So main ultimate purpose. So according to each usage, the one Veda is divided into 4 by Vyasadeva, and this is what each one contains. And all the Vedas has 4 divisions, which is all 4 Veda has 4 divisions, which is Brahmanas, which this is not the Brahmanas, the person referred to. This is a category. Brahmanas means how, this gives a knowledge about how to live in city. Aranyakas means how to live in forest. Why? Because in Vedic civilization, only, one division lived only Grahastha lived in the city. All other divisions, sannyasis, vanaprastha, and brahmachari, they all lived in the forest. Most of the people lived in the forest. So Brahmanas means how to live in city. Aranyak means it gave knowledge about how to live in forest. Samhita had mantras and prayers, and Upanishad give information about how to get out of the material world. So we are still in Shruti section. One Veda divided into 4, and the 4 Vedas have all this information. So Upanishads are how to get out of this material world, but each Veda has Upanishads. 108 Upanishads come from all the Vedas only. So we'll talk about that. So let's go to the next slide. Upavedas also comes under Shruti. Upavedas are basically applied knowledge, like a technical work. So like a Dhanur Veda explain archery, Gandharva Veda explain music and dance, Shilpa Shastra explain arts and crafts. These are all technical work. So that's called Upavedas. Ayurveda explain medicine. And then each Veda has 6 aspects, like 6 limbs, Vedangas. Angas means limbs or aspects. And Vedangas like 6 limbs. So for example, each Veda has to have these all information for people to understand. So like example, Shiksha means phonetic science. Vyakarana means grammar. It has to have a grammar. Nikriti means meaning or dictionary. Chandas means meter. Jyotish means time and science. Kalpa means rituals. Those are called 6 limbs or 6 aspects of Vedas. So we are going to go into the last one, which is Upanishad. So now we are in the Shruti section. 1 Veda into 4 Veda, and under Vedas, what are all the divisions? And finally, it ends up with the Upanishad. Upanishad also comes under Shruti, which is heard. So Upanishad basically means receiving knowledge, sitting next to the teacher. So just by hearing. So a self-realized soul will teach the subject matter about the absolute truth. So Vedanta means, Veda means knowledge, Anta means end. Upanishad is the end of Vedas. Because if you see in the chart, under Shruti, Upanishad is the end knowledge or summary of knowledge. And in our disciplic succession, 108 Upanishads are there. I think in Chaitanya Charitamrita also, Prabhupada has mentioned that 108 Upanishads. Out of 108, 11 are very important. And out of 11, the one is Isha Upanishad, which is Prabhupada mercifully given us the English translation. So up to this point, we talked about Shruti. So now let's go into the Smriti section. So this is a 108 Upanishad list. As I said, each Veda has Upanishads. Basically, Upanishad is explanation of, from the Vedas, they take all the important aspect of philosophy and processes and then put that in the Upanishad as like an end knowledge. So that's what Upanishad means. So each Veda has certain Upanishads. So let's go into Smriti now. So now we finished with what is heard and those branches. Now Smriti is what is remembered and written. So Puranas will come under Smriti. So if you think Vedas as a law book, Puranas are law journal. So Srila Vyasadeva mercifully compiled Puranas for people to understand easily, because Vedic knowledge is difficult to understand, and there are different type of people. There's some people their life is conducted by mode of goodness, some are mode of passion, some are mode of ignorance. So for them to understand those Vedic knowledges is difficult. So what he did was, basically he took all the Vedas, the teachings of Vedas, and put it in a Puranas and like examples, with the examples. So Puranas are called fifth Veda. Purana and Mahabharata are called fifth Veda. They don't come under the Vedas, like 4 Vedas, but it's called fifth Veda. As I said, because some Puranas are people for in mode of goodness, some are for mode of passion and mode of ignorance. But Srimad Bhagavatam is also comes under Puranas, but it is in pure goodness, because those other Puranas mostly focuses on the 4th thing, the dharma, kama, moksha, those things. But this Bhagavatam is pure goodness. It's mostly focused on the devotional service of the Lord. So that's what we'll talk about that in the later slide, how it's in pure goodness. So these are the list of Puranas. If you look at those things, imagine, look at the verses. So many verses, like a Skanda Purana has 81,000 verses. Padma Purana has 55,000 verses. But, Srila Vyasadeva so mercifully, made this into the essence given in Bhagavatam, 18,000, only 18,000 verses, right? So beautiful. So we don't have lifetime to, read all this. And then also Puranas are classified in different ways. So like Vaishnava Puranas, Brahma Puranas, Shaiva Puranas, that's one category. And then based on the modes like Sattva, Raja, and Tama, the Puranas are divided again. So we are in the Smriti section. Under Smriti come Puranas. Puranas are basically teachings of Veda with the example that Vyasadeva compiled. So let's go into Itihas. What is Itihas? Itihas it's a literatures explaining the historical event. Either they will have a single hero or multiple heroes in that. So for example, Ramayana. If you take Ramayana, single hero, Lord Ramachandra is a hero. And if you take Mahabharata, Pandavas, multiple heroes in that lineage. So those are called Ramayana, Mahabharata is called Itihas. And they will have subject matter of both material subject matter and transcendental subject matter. And Bhagavad Gita was part of Mahabharata. But the culmination, it culminates, what is the end, teaching of Bhagavad Gita? Krishna says, give up all the religion, just surrender unto me. That was the teaching. And what is the Ramayana? The conclusive teaching was, again, to surrender unto me, fully surrender and take shelter of Lord Sri Ramachandra. So that's a final conclusion. So this is about Itihas. So Itihas also comes under Smriti. And then finally, Kavyas. Kavyas means from the Itihas, like we talked about Puranas, Itihas. So take some stories or history from Itihas or Puranas and make it as a dramatic, poetical presentation. That's called Kavyas. The examples are Shakuntala, Raghuvamsa, Mehaduta, those things comes under Kavyas. Okay. So now next, two more things under Smritis, Tantras. So Tantras are given by Lord Shiva. What is Tantras is, people are not, how to say, not everybody can take all the Vedic knowledge and do the purification and elevate themselves. There are some grades of people who are going to be in, lower level, that they won't be able to understand and follow the Vedic civilization. For them, Lord Shiva mercifully given Tantras. Tantras are like people who are very much engrossed in meat eating, illicit sex and intoxication. They cannot follow the Vedic system. They have to really elevate themselves to come to the Vedic system. So Tantras or literatures or Shastras given by Lord Shiva, they have two aspects, right and a left aspect. Right aspect means people who are engaged in meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex. And for the left aspect has the low class activities like a black magic. So they will follow this literature, the Tantras, but then the goal is eventually to elevate themselves and they'll come to the Vedic level. So that is what called Tantras. So just a basic definition. And then what is Pancharatra? This is the last one I'm going to discuss about under the Smriti section. Pancharatra is also spoken by Supreme Personality of Godhead. Basically, it's a manual. It's a code of conduct. It has a lot of information about like deity worship, day-to-day deity worship, how to purify the worshipper, everything about, deity worship. It also has information about installation of deities in the temple. It also has information about how to celebrate some festivals. Radhashtami, Janmashtami, we celebrate Govardhan Puja, and every details, and everything we need to know we'll have. All the four sampradayas have different manual, like deity worship manual. We have our own too. So how is it beneficial? Pancharatra, in other Shruti, all the Vedas, all those things need, people have to be qualified to read, understand, and elevate themselves. Pancharatra is very, people in Kali Yuga, mostly Shudras, they can get trained by following this Pancharatra Vidhi. How? Because it gives the codes of conduct, and then by association, by initiation, one can easily train and elevate themselves even to the Brahmanical level. So Pancharatra is a very good one to follow. So Lord Mahaprabhu has, he instructed Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami about this Pancharatra, and then he has advised them to write books. And so Sanatana Goswami wrote Hari Bhakti Vilas, that is, about the code of conducts. And then Rupa Goswami wrote Nectar of Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And our Prabhupada very mercifully gave us this summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's all about code of conduct for our Krishna conscious movement. So our Pancharatra is Nectar of Devotion. So that's about Pancharatra. So let's understand what is Vedanta Sutra before we go into how Bhagavatam is the essence. So Veda means knowledge. We discussed that. Anta means end. So end of knowledge. So but Shudra, what is Shudra means? Sutra means it's a code. So they take all the Vedic knowledge and then they make a code or give us some short words or make it as the essence of code number. Now, I don't say numbers in words. In minimum words, using a code, they'll explain the essence of all knowledge which is in the Veda. And there are a few hundreds of Vedanta Sutra. So if it's in the code form, in a minimum words, but inside there's so much knowledge, so much essence is there. So how people will understand? Then all the acharyas will write bhasya, which is commentaries. So for people to understand, then they'll write commentaries on Vedanta Sutra. So Vedanta Sutra is written by many acharyas. So I listed few here. Vedanta Sutra is also called Brahma Sutra. Okay. So now we are getting into our main subject. What is, I'm going to skip this slide. How Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of all this. Okay. So one slide. What is Prasthana Traya? Prasthana Traya means we can get Vedic knowledge from three sources. So far we discussed two sources. We didn't discuss the third one. We discussed about Shruti. We can get knowledge from Shruti, the Upanishads, Vedas and Upanishad. And we can get knowledge from Smriti, which is Puranas, Itihas, those things. But there's one more category called Nyaya Prasthana. Nyaya Prasthana is Vedanta Sutra. So what is Vedanta Sutra is, it's a code in small words explaining all the Vedic knowledge. And it's also presented with the logic and argument. So it's basically summary of entire Veda, right? So that is Nyaya Prasthana. So Shruti Prasthana, Smriti Prasthana, and Nyaya Prasthana. These all three things are in Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam has the essence of all these three things. So let's see, go to the next slide. So now Srila Vyasadeva wrote all this, Veda, he divided the Veda and then Upanishads and then the Smriti, the Puranas, Itikas, Kavyas, and Vedanta Sutras. Everything was, given by Vyasadeva. But at his heart, he was not satisfied because there was more emphasis, was all the Puranas explain the glories of Krishna, all the Puranas, but there was not much emphasis given on devotional service and glories of Krishna. It was mostly those four things, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So he was not satisfied in his heart. And then what he did was he took that Vedanta Sutra and wrote commentary, not verse by verse. He didn't write commentary by verse. So we just learned Vedanta Sutra is the knowledge of all the Vedas in Sutra form, right? And then he didn't take verse by verse. He just took the principles or subject matter and then just wrote commentary. So it's just so narrowed down and we are just getting the essence in Bhagavatam, right? So, because and what time he wrote, he gave that in his maturity of his career, maturity of his high knowledge, because he wrote everything and then finally he did that. So I was going to give an analogy of, if somebody is a chef, he's a cook, great cook and chef, all his life, what he did was cooking job, he made hundreds and thousands of recipes all his life. And then he's inviting you and saying, and he cooked maybe 100 item that day. And he's telling you, in all my life, I have been a chef, 60 years of experience I have. And I cooked so many items. But today I cooked 100. And out of 100, this one item is the best among everything. And it's, if you taste that, it's going to give you everything that you need to know. And I want you to try it. Would you try all the 100 or just the one? Just the one, just enough, right? We will get the essence. That's what it is. So we have Shruti scriptures, Smriti scriptures. Vyasadeva gave all these Puranas and everything, but then Vedanta Sutra. But then he just wrote the natural commentary, and just say, this is the essence. This is what we need, devotional service to the Supreme Lord and how to get out of this material world. That's all we need, right? So, so I'm going to discuss this. So in Bhagavatam, it says, Bhagavatam is a Nigama Kalpataror Kalitam Phalam. Srimad Bhagavatam is a mature fruit of desire tree of Vedic literature. So Vedic literature is compared to desire tree. Anything a man needs to know, it's there. But the Bhagavatam is a mature fruit. We don't have lifetime to analyze, the tree, the root, the branches, the twigs and everything. If there is a fruit, we just have to relish it. And the fruit is a ripened fruit. It does not even have a seed or a peel, just full of juice. We just have to relish it. That is Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam is also compared to the cream of all the Vedic literatures. Because if you take the Vedanta Sutra, which is the compilation of all the Vedic knowledge, and if you take the essence from that, that's a cream. That's Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a cream. So the Vedas are causeless mercy of the Lord. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says that Maya Mukta Jivera Nahi Svata Krishna Jnana Jivera Kripaya Kailo Krishna Veda Purana. It says the conditioned soul cannot revive his Krishna consciousness by his own effort. By out of causeless mercy, Krishna compiled the Vedic literature and its statements and its supplements, the Puranas, in a literary incarnation form. That's Srila Vyasadeva. So it's a costless mercy upon us, for us from Krishna. But what is the point of this? So, okay, we learned about, we know there's so many Vedas, there's so many grades of people, they all take it. So we know the ultimate reason, it's the conclusion, what we need to know. But what is the ultimate purpose of studying Veda? So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto, mataha smriti jnanam apohanam cha, vedaicha sarvair aham eva vedyo, vedandakrit vedavid eva chaham. He says that by all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So practical application here. So studying the Veda is to know Krishna. And what is the, if you go in deeper more, what is the practical application in this age of Kali? Just studying this Vedas, okay, we understand Krishna, but what do? We chant his holy name. Hare Krishna Mahamantra is a practical application. So goal of the Vedic study is to understand or know Krishna. In Brahma, in Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami says that Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidim Vina Aikantiki Hare Bhakti Utpata Eva Kalpate. It says devotional service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic literatures like the Upanishad, Puranas, Narada Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. Prabhupada also emphasized in the purport, in the meaning of this verse that, one must, just not do devotional service for show, or it will be a disturbance unless we understand the scriptures also. We cannot understand Krishna fully without understanding this, studying the Vedas. So Shruti is given in Upanishad. Upanishad is in Vedanta Sutra and Vedanta Sutra in Bhagavatam. So we have Bhagavatam. So the question comes, is it possible to read all the Vedic literature? So the Vedic literatures are put into systematic order. So it's all given in a very nice order. For what? For the benefit of the fallen soul. So because the fallen souls are detached from the loving service of the Lord. So for that fallen soul, these Vedic literatures are given. So we must take advantage of these literatures. And what we need to do, we need to free ourselves from this bondage of material existence, basically just to get out of this material world, right? But so many, Veda, one Veda, four Veda, Purana, Idihas, Kavyas, Upanishads, so many are there. Is it possible to read all Vedic literature? Prabhupada says that in our Krishna conscious movement, we have therefore limited our study of the Vedic literature to Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. These four works are sufficient for preaching purpose. They're adequate for understanding the philosophy and spreading the missionary activities all over the world. If one studies a particular book, he must do so thoroughly. That is the principle. By thoroughly studying limited number of books, one can understand the philosophy. So it's very clear. We have 4 books. That's all we need. We need to read Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavad Gita, and then we need to read our life based on the code of conduct, which is given in Nectar of Devotion. That's all, 4 books. So it's the last slide. So we have an ocean of Vedic literature, but those literatures the ocean is given in only 4 books. Bhagavad Gita is a Upanishad. It's a Gita Upanishad. How? Because Upanishad has all the essence of all the Vedanta. And Bhagavad Gita is directly spoken by Krishna, and it's the essence of Vedanta Sutra. So it's a Gita Upanishad. So under Upanishad, we have Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavatam is a natural commentary of Vedanta Sutra. So we have that. And then the Nectar of Devotion is a code of conduct book. We have that, Pancharatra. And then Puranas, for Puranas, we have Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is a practical application. So we have all these 4 books for perfect our life. That's the mercy of our Srila Prabhupada. So to conclude here today, so we saw how Parikshit Maharaj met Sukadev Goswami, and then how the Bhagavatam was recited to him, spoke to him, and then some information about Vedas, Shruti and Smriti, and the branches underneath. and how the Vedanta Sutra and how Srimad Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedas. I will stop here, and thank you so much for joining today and giving me this opportunity. Please correct me if I said something mistake and made mistake in explaining those Vedas and branches. This is the first time in an attempt to understand. I listened to a series of lecture and put this presentation together. Correct me if I said anything wrong. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. I really appreciate your presentations.
Thank you, Mataji.
It was very, very nice and very, very rich in knowledge.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
We have 9 minutes. If there is any discussions or comments, we can take now.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavata
Hare
Pranam.
Krishna, Mataji. Dandavata Pranam.
That was an awesome presentation, I must say. Thank you so much for working so much for this presentation. I used to hear, I really don't have any question, but a comment. I used to hear about Nyaya Prasthana, but in several discussions, but I never understood where it falls. Like, I got the idea, like, where we should look for. It's like one of those sources, like Shruti, Smriti, and Nyaya Prasthana.
Yes,
So now I got a little bit understanding of that. And I have a question, like, yes, I understand. So where, each and every presentation, PowerPoint that you had, it needs, for me, it needs a lot of, manthan, I need to see it again to absorb and understand a little bit more. So is there any way I can go look through those again?
Sure, Mataji. I'll share the PowerPoint in the group, the study group, and I will also share the source, the seminar that I listened to. It is by a disciple by Srila Prabhupada in 1993. He gave a seminar. It's a set of series of lectures on the tree of Vedic literature. And there is a PDF information too. So I'll share those two resources.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other questions, comments?
Hare Krishna or Jaishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhupada.
Oh, thank you so much, Mataji, for there is so much of information that you put in the presentation. And I know the Vedic of tree knowledge is so huge. It's not something that small. So thank you for putting. I don't have any questions, but I want to really appreciate the effort that you put to listen those lectures and put into this presentation. This is not a simple thing. Thank you very much for that. And also, Mataji, so you can, I think, you can put the previously Ravi Prabhu shared the Google Drive link. Maybe
Sure.
you can put that everybody can share from there instead of directly that.
Sure, bro.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, bro.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, bro.
Thank you, Mataji. Like all our other listeners said, it's a wonderful presentation, a lot of work in giving us a nice summary of Vedic Vedas and, the source and different classifications. Mataji, I have one question. As you were speaking, it came to me, but I just want to understand what is the correct way to, if somebody asks what is the correct way to give that explanation. So we say that Shruti is the source has to be Shruti, coming from the Lord, because humans, it is not compiled by humans because humans have the 4 defects.
Yes.
But when we take the original Shruti and then it comes through the disciplic succession, the information is transferred from one person to another person. That is also, there is a human aspect in that too, right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Like, even though we are following our acharyas and acharyas are following their acharyas, there is a human aspect in that. Does the human defect somehow affect that also? Is that possible or no?
Yes, yes, I heard this in one of the lecture, the Glories of Srimad Bhagavatam by Radhika Ramanan Prabhu's lecture, that he was explaining those days it's not that easy to get manuscript. And imagine that, the manuscript for so many verses, like 24,000, 18,000 verses to get manuscript and translate that. This is not for Acharya, I'm just relating that to your question, Prabhu.
Yeah.
And then those people who transcribe that, they are not doing it out of, they have interest in those things. They're doing it as their job. So for them, it just get it done. So in those process, there will be error. There will be error. That was for some, like he was giving that example of, there is going to be it's getting translated, there will be error. But I don't know if that answered your question, Prabhu. So,
I mean, that's one aspect.
As long as it comes in disciplic section and our Acharya is giving the commentary, we can take it.
Okay. So, I mean, maybe the assumption or assumption or not the assumption, maybe we have to consider the purity of our acharyas. That's why it is not contaminated. If it is done by some other person who's not pure, then it can get contaminated.
I don't remember the verse from Bhagavatam now. I think it's in the first canto, in the first couple of chapters, that even though it's fault, there's a verse there says, even though there is faultly, even though there is a little fault is there, it's okay. Transcendental literature, we can take it. I'll refer to that verse, exact verse.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Again, it's me again. Mataji, I was just wondering, during when the Shrutis was dominant, and since this Vedas were spoken by Lord himself, and so, and it was in a sound, it was present in a sound vibration, right, as you said. So in Satyuga, the purity of this catching the sound vibration was maintained by meditation, I believe. So the rishis were trained by meditation to catch those sound vibration. Not ordinary. I'm just thinking, ordinary people cannot catch those sound vibration. Only the people who are trained, like rishis, through meditation, they could only hear those sound vibration, and like how we have in a present day, we need some radio frequency to catch those, So do you think it could have been something like this?
Yeah, so Vedas are knowledge, right, Mataji? So it is basically a knowledge important. But those days, the Vedic life, Vedic civilization, their intelligence, their memory were so good. They don't have to have some, like we do, like in books and things. They don't have to have that. They can just hear it, sitting next to the teacher, just to hear it, and they'll remember it. And then they can use that knowledge. That's what it meant. Shruti means. But later it was written because as the yuga progresses, people, memory and intelligence are not going to be sharp. So they need something in a written form so they can study it. That's what it put into in written form.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Dandavat Pranams.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranams.
Mataji, yes. Thank you for giving us very abundant knowledge and yes, a very nice presentation, Mataji. So my question is just regarding, day to day, the things that I usually listen. So I know there is a slight difference. For example, if we take Vishnu Sahasranama Stotram and Brahma Samhita, so one is Stotram and then the other one is Samhita, right? So can you so I just want to know what is the difference between the Stotra and the Samhita. I mean, so I believe both glorifies the Lord, but so there might be some difference that I'm trying to understand, Mataji.
Stotram is also, stotra means glorification of Lord. Samhita means, as per my recent research, Samhita means it's a text of Vedas. So the Vedas, we have the 4 Vedas. Those Vedas texts are in the Samhita. And the Samhita is a collection of mantras. So that I can explain, Prabhu, Samhita, but where the stotram come from, that I cannot. I don't have much information on that. So Samhita comes under Shruti, scriptures, and it's collection of verses. Different Samhitas are there. So collection of mantra is called Samhita, Sukha Samhita, Brahma Samhita, those things. So that comes under the Shruti part. But this, the stotram, like they are referring to Vishnu Sahasranama stotram, those are prayers, but I'm sure it comes under Smriti, but I don't know which category it comes under.
Okay, Mataji.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. So there is a question in the chat asked by Lal Gopal Prabhu. Maybe we can see.
Sure. So the question is, Gita was studying the Lord compiled the Vedas. Can you share when the Vedas were created, during the creation maybe? Yes, Prabhu, we discussed that in the beginning, that Tene Brahma Adikavaye. So the Vedas created when Brahma was created, the first living being, and the Vedas were directly imparted to his heart. And then he did the creation work. And then from him, the Vedas and knowledge was distributed to his sons. And that's the way it just descended. We discussed that, Prabhu. Did that answer your question, Prabhu?
I think he cannot speak. That's what he said in the note.
Sure.
Mataji.
Yes.
Sorry, Mataji, I have been doing it here, so I couldn't converse. Let me see. 1 second, give me a minute. Yeah, thank you for answering that question. I just want to share on that thing that Vedas are never been created.
Sorry, Prabhu. Sorry to interrupt, Prabhu. I meant to say that, Vedas are eternal, but it's just imparted in a given, so I didn't mention that. Thank you, Prabhu. Go ahead, Prabhu.
Okay. That's all. I just want to make sure that because, we all must really know that important point. Otherwise, it just leads to a different philosophy altogether. Nyaya Shastra and others, which they believe that Vedas have been created at one point of time, which is not the case. Vedas are always exist. So the question is, where does this exist during the time of Pralaya? If Vedas are existing, and the Lord imparted that knowledge to, like you explained, and during the Pralaya stage, which is everything in annihilated and in a dormant state, unmanifested stage, where does Veda resides? Where does it?
Sorry, Prabhu, I'm going to pull the slide. I have that information in one of the slide. I think it's better
if you already covered these things. I just don't want to take the time.
No, I didn't mention that during the class. I skipped that, so I'll go back.
And I apologize for John
no
and all these questions which you already covered.
So, and in the slide, I have that here, the Shruti Prasthana. So after when the next day of Brahma start, the same Shruti for next day of Brahma is given again by the Lord. Is that?
Yeah, my question is not, my question is, where is it resides? And for something to exist, it has to be somewhere. That's when it can come into manifested state. We are all in the Pralaya stage with the Lord, and during the creation, we come into existence. So we have been somewhere, and any object has to be, this is called Satkaryavada. It has to come from something which already existing. So where was this Veda situated before the creation? If Vedas are a set of instructions, set of whatever it is, right? You all know, you must have explained those things. So where was this instruction? Where was all these things before the creation?
That information I don't have, Prabhu, but I did read that Vedas are eternal, and it's given to Brahma by Garbhadaksha Vishnu after he's been created. It's important to him, and it happens on every day. Every day the Brahmas, it's same thing is repeated. Same Shruti is repeated to him. That much I know, but where
you already answered. I think you just have to go to little.
It's with Vishnu. It's with Vishnu. So
exactly. So it is with Krishna. It is residing within the heart of Krishna. So it's always eternal. That's why Vedas are eternal, and it resides in the Lord's heart. Therefore, this dharma is called Sanatana Dharma, which other religions just exist 500 years back, 1,000 years back, 2,000. We can trace back, but our Sanatana Dharma can never be perished, cannot go away, because it is not residing in some place or in a book format or in someone's head or mind. It is with the Lord. Therefore, even if we see the degradation of the Vedic practices now, again, it's going to come back because it's eternally situated in the heart of the Lord. Therefore, it keeps coming. It never has an end. I think this, the reason I'm saying this is so very important point. Otherwise, we may get confused and start thinking this is also has a starting point, or I don't know where to create it. So I'm not trying to put you in a spot to challenge. I just want to make sure this spot is very important, should be communicated to our members. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for bringing that. Thank you, Hare Krishna. If there are no other questions, and again, I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. This service is really helping me for my purification. And I thank Ramacharya Prabhu for this and all the other devotees for joining today. I will share that information. I really encourage everyone to listen to that seminar. It's a very useful seminar. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot from that. It's the first time I'm learning about this. So I will share that information. And thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyacha, kripa sindhubhyevacha, Paditanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha, Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.